Welcome everybody, this is Alan with Daily Armour of God. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you're all doing well. This is Reading the Bible in 123 Days. We're on day 21. Today we'll be reading Deuteronomy 3 through 9. So, continuing on in Deuteronomy, chapter 3, verse 1. Then we turned and went up the way to Bashan, and Og, king of Bashan, came out against us, he and all his people, to battle at Edrei. I just want to say real quick, this is a recap. The last two chapters we read yesterday, and then this one, it's basically a recap from all the events, from them being in Egypt, to coming out of Egypt, to wandering the desert, and all that stuff. So that's where we're at, just to give you a little reminder. It's a recap right now. Deuteronomy 3:2. And Yahweh said unto me, Fear him not, for I will deliver him and all his people and his land into thy hand, and thou shalt do unto him as thou didst unto Sihon king of the Amorites, which dwelt at Heshbon. So Yahweh our God delivered into our hands Og also, the king of Bashan, and all his people, and we smote him until none was left to him remaining. And we took all his cities at that time. There was not a city which we took not from them. 80 cities, all the region of Argob, the kingdom of Og and Bashan. All these cities were fenced with high walls, gates, and bars, beside unwalled towns a great many. And we utterly destroyed them, as we did unto Sihon king of Heshbon, utterly destroying the men, women, and children of every city. But the cattle and the spoil of the cities we took for a prey to ourselves. And he took at that time out of the hand of the two kings of the Amorites the land that was on this side Jordan, from the river Arnon unto Mount Hermon, which Hermon the Sidonians call Sirion, and the Amorites call it Shinri. All the cities of the plain, and all Gilead, and all Bashan, unto Salcah and Edrei, cities of the kingdom of Og and Bashan. For only Og king of Bashan remained of the remnant of giants. Behold, his bedstead was a bedstead of iron. It is not in Rabbath of the children of Ammon. 9 cubits was the length thereof, and 4 cubits the breadth thereof, after the cubit of a man. In this land, which we possessed at that time, from Arar, which is by the river Arnon, and half Mount Gilead, and the cities thereof gave I unto the Reubenites and to the Gadites. And the rest of the Gilead and Bashan, being the kingdom of Og, gave I unto the half tribe of Manasseh, and all the region of Argob, with all Bashan, which was called the land of giants. Jair, the son of Manasseh, took all the country of Argob unto the coast of Geshuri and Makathi, and called them after his own name, Bashan Havoth Jair, unto this day. And I gave Gilead unto Machir, and unto the Reubenites, and unto the Gadites. I gave from Gilead up even unto the river Arnon, half the valley, and the border even unto the river Jabbok, which is the border of the children of Ammon. The plain also in Jordan, and the coast thereof, from Chinnereth even unto the sea of the plain, even the salt sea, under Ashdoth Pisgah, eastward. I commanded you at that time, saying, Yahweh your God hath given you this land to possess it. Ye shall pass over armed before your brethren, the children of Israel, all that are meet for the war. But your wives and your little ones and your cattle, for I know that ye have much cattle, shall abide in your cities which I have given you, until Yahweh have given you rest unto your brethren, as well as unto you, and until they possess the land which Yahweh your God hath given them beyond Jordan. And then shall ye return every man unto his possession which I have given you. And I commanded Joshua at that time, saying, Thine eyes have seen all that Yahweh your God hath done unto thee, these 2 kings. So shall Yahweh do unto all the kingdoms whither thou passest. Ye shall not fear them, for Yahweh your God, he shall fight for you. And I besought Yahweh at the time, saying, O Lord Yahweh, thou hast begun to show thy servants thy greatness and thy mighty hand. For what God is there in heaven or in earth that can do according to thy works, and according to thy might? I pray thee, let me move over and see the good land that is beyond Jordan, that goodly mountain and Lebanon. But Yahweh was wroth with me for your sakes, and would not hear me. And Yahweh said unto me, Let it suffice thee, speak no more unto me of this matter. Get thee up into the top of Pisgah, and lift up thine eyes westward and northward, and southward and eastward, and behold it with thine eyes, for thou shalt not go over this Jordan. But charge Joshua, and encourage him, and strengthen him, for he shall go over before this people, and he shall cause them to inherit the land which thou shalt see. So he abode in the valley over against Beth Peor. Deuteronomy 4. Now therefore hearken, O Israel, unto the statutes and unto the judgments which I teach you, for to do them, that ye may live, and to go and possess the land which Yahweh God of your fathers giveth you. Ye shall not add unto the word which I command you, neither shall ye diminish aught from it, that ye may keep the commandments of Yahweh your God, which I command you. Your eyes have seen what Yahweh did because of Baal Peor. For all the men that followed Baal Peor, Yahweh thy God hath destroyed them from among you. But ye that did cleave unto Yahweh your God are alive, every one of you this day. Behold, I have taught you statutes and judgments, even as Yahweh my God commanded me, that ye should do so in the land whither ye go to possess it. Keep therefore and do them, for this is your wisdom and your understanding in the sight of the nations, which shall hear all these statutes and say, surely this great nation is a wise and understanding people. For what nation is there so great who hath God so nigh unto them, as Yahweh our God is in all things that we call upon him for? And what nation is there so great that hath statutes and judgments so righteous as all this law which I set before you this day? Only take heed to thyself, and keep thy soul diligently, lest thou forget the things which thine eyes have seen, and lest they depart from thy heart all the days of thy life, but teach them thy sons and thy sons' sons. Especially the day that thou stoodest before Yahweh thy God in Horeb, when Yahweh said to me, gather me the people together, and I will make them hear my words, that they may learn to fear me all the days that they shall live upon the earth, and they may teach their children. And he came near and stood under the mountain burned with fire unto the midst of heaven, with darkness, clouds, and thick darkness. And Yahweh spake unto you out of the midst of the fire. Ye heard the voice of the words, but saw no similitude, only ye heard a voice. And he declared unto you his covenant, which he commanded you to perform, even 10 commandments, and he wrote them upon 2 tables of stone. And Yahweh commanded me at that time to teach you statutes and judgments, that ye might do them in the land whither ye go over to possess it. Take ye therefore good heed unto yourselves, for ye saw no manner of similitude on the day that Yahweh spake unto you in Horeb out of the midst of the fire, lest ye corrupt yourselves and make you a graven image, the similitude of any figure, the likeness of male or female, the likeness of any beast that is on the earth, the likeness of any winged fowl that flieth in the air, the likeness of anything that creepeth on the ground, the likeness of any fish that is in the waters beneath the earth. Unless thou lift up thine eyes into heaven, and when thou seest the sun and moon and the stars, even all the host of heaven, shouldst be driven to worship them and serve them, which Yahweh thy God hath divided unto all nations under the whole heaven. But Yahweh hath taken you, and brought you forth out of the iron furnace, even out of Egypt, to be unto him a people of inheritance, as ye are this day. Furthermore, Yahweh was angry with me for your sakes, and sware that I should not go over Jordan, and that I should not go into that land, the good land, which Yahweh thy God giveth thee for an inheritance. But I must die in this land. I must not go over Jordan, but ye shall go over and possess that good land. Take heed unto yourselves, lest you forget the covenant of Yahweh your God, which he made with you, and make you a graven image, or the likeness of anything which Yahweh thy God hath forbidden thee. For Yahweh thy God is a consuming fire, even a jealous God. When thou shalt beget children and children's children, ye shall have remained long in the land, and shall corrupt yourselves and make a graven image of the likeness of anything, and shall do evil in the sight of Yahweh thy God, to provoke him to anger. I call heaven and earth to witness against you this day, that ye shall soon utterly perish off the land whereunto ye go over Jordan to possess it. Ye shall not prolong your days upon it, but ye shall be utterly destroyed. And Yahweh shall scatter you among the nations, and ye shall be left few in number among the heathen, whither Yahweh shall lead you. And there ye shall serve gods, the work of men's hands, wood and stone, which neither see, nor hear, nor eat, nor smell, but it from thence. Thou shalt seek Yahweh thy God. thou shalt find him, if thou seek him with all thy heart and with all thy soul. When thou art in tribulation, and all these things are come upon thee, even in the latter days, if thou turn to Yahweh thy God, and shalt be obedient unto his voice. For Yahweh thy God is a merciful God. He will not forsake thee, neither destroy thee, nor forget the covenant of thy fathers which he sware unto them. For ask now of the days that are past, which were before them, since the day that God created man upon the earth, and ask from the one side of heaven unto the other, whether there hath been any such thing as this great thing is, or hath been heard like it. Did ever people hear the voice of God speaking out of the midst of fire, as thou hast heard and live? Or hath God essayed to go to take him a nation from the midst of another nation, by temptations, signs, by wonders, and war, by a mighty hand, and by stretched out arm, and by great terrors, according to all that Yahweh your God did for you in Egypt before your eyes? And to thee it was showed, that thou mightest know that Yahweh, he is God, there is none else beside him. Out of heaven he made thee to hear his voice, that he might instruct thee, and upon earth he showed thee this great fire, his great fire, and thou heardest his words out of the midst of the fire. And because he loved thy fathers, therefore he chose their seed after them, and brought thee out of his sight with his mighty power out of Egypt, to drive out nations from before thee, greater and mightier than thou art, to bring thee in, and to give thee their land for an inheritance, as it is this day. Know therefore this day, and consider it in thine heart, that Yahweh, he is God in heaven above, and upon the earth beneath. There is none else. Thou shalt keep therefore his statutes and his commandments, which I command thee this day, that it may go well with thee, and with thy children after thee, and that thou mayest prolong thy days upon the earth, which Yahweh thy God giveth thee forever. Then Moses severed 3 cities on this side Jordan toward the sun rising, that the slayer might flee thither, which should kill his neighbor unawares, and hated him not in time past, and that fleeing into one of these cities he might live, namely Bezer in the wilderness, in the plain country of the Reubenites, and Ramoth and Gilead of the Gadites, and Golan and Bashan of the Manassites. And this is the law which Moses set before the children of Israel. These are the testimonies and the statutes and the judgments which Moses spake unto the children of Israel after they came forth out of Egypt, on this side Jordan, in the valley over against Beth Peor, in the land of Sihon king of the Amorites, who dwelt at Heshbon, whom Moses and the children of Israel smote after they were come forth out of Egypt. And they possessed his land and the land of Og king of Bashan, 2 kings of the Amorites, which were on this side Jordan toward the sun rising. From Arar, which is by the bank of the river Arnon, even to Mount Sion, which is Hermon, and unto the plain on this side Jordan eastward, even unto the sea of the plain under the springs of Pisgah. Deuteronomy 5. And Moses called all Israel, and said unto them, Hear, O Israel, the statutes and judgments which I speak in your ears this day, that ye may learn them, and keep and do them. Yahweh our God made a covenant with us in Horeb. Yahweh made not this covenant with our fathers, but with us, even us, who are all of us here alive this day. Yahweh talked with you face to face in the mount out of the midst of fire. I stood between Yahweh and you at that time, to show you the word of Yahweh, for you were afraid by reason of the fire, and went not up into the mount, saying, I am Yahweh thy God, which brought thee out of the land of Egypt, from the house of bondage. Thou shalt have none other gods before me. Thou shalt not make thee any graven image, or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the waters beneath the earth. Thou shalt not bow down thyself unto them, nor serve them, for I, Yahweh, thy God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children unto the 3rd and 4th generation of them that hate me, and showing mercy unto thousands of them that love me, and keep my commandments. Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain, for Yahweh will not hold him guiltless that taketh his name in vain. Keep the Sabbath day, to sanctify it, as Yahweh thy God hath commanded thee. 6 days thou shalt labor and do all thy work, but the 7th day is the Sabbath of Yahweh thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, nor thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thine ox, nor thine ass, nor thine any of thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates, that thy manservant and thy maidservant may rest as well as thou. And remember that thou wast a servant in the land of Egypt, and that Yahweh thy God brought thee out thence through a mighty hand and by a stretched out arm. Therefore Yahweh thy God commanded thee to keep the Sabbath day. Honor thy father and thy mother, as Yahweh thy God hath commanded thee, that thy days may be prolonged, and that it may go well with thee in the land which Yahweh thy God giveth thee. Thou shalt not kill, neither shalt thou commit adultery, neither shalt thou steal, neither shalt thou bear false witness against thy neighbor, neither shalt thou desire thy neighbor's wife, neither shalt thou covet thy neighbor's house, his field, or his manservant, or his maidservant, his ox, or his ass, or anything that is thy neighbor's. These words Yahweh spake unto all your assembly in the mount out of the midst of the fire, of the cloud and the thick darkness, with a great voice. And he added no more. And he wrote them in 2 tables of stone, and delivered them unto me. And it came to pass, when ye heard the voice out of the midst of the darkness, for the mountain did burn with fire, that ye came near unto me, even all the heads of your tribes and your elders, and ye said, Behold, Yahweh our God hath showed us his glory and his greatness, and we have heard his voice out of the midst of the fire. We have seen this day that God doth talk with man, and he liveth. Now therefore why should we die? For this great fire will consume us, if we hear the voice of Yahweh our God any more. Then we shall die. For who is there of all flesh that hath heard the voice of the living God speaking out of the midst of fire, as we have, and lived? Go thou near, and hear all that Yahweh our God shall say, and speak thou unto us all that Yahweh our God shall speak unto thee, and we will hear it and do it. And Yahweh heard the voice of your words when ye spake unto me, and Yahweh said unto me, I have heard the voice of the words of this people, which they have spoken unto thee. They have well said all that they have spoken. Oh, that there were such a heart in them, that they would fear me and keep all my commandments always, that it might be well with them, and with their children forever. Go say to them, Get you into your tents again. But as for thee, stand thou here by me, and I will speak unto thee all the commandments, and the statutes, and the judgments, which thou shalt teach them, and they may do them in the land which I give them to possess it. Ye shall observe to do therefore as Yahweh your God hath commanded you. Ye shall not turn aside to the right hand or to the left. Ye shall walk in all the ways which Yahweh your God hath commanded you, that ye may live, and that it may be well with you, that ye may prolong your days in the land which ye shall possess. Deuteronomy 6. Now these the commandments, the statutes, and the judgments which Yahweh your God commanded to teach you, that ye might do them in the land whither ye go to possess it. That thou mightest fear Yahweh thy God, to keep all his statutes and commandments which I commanded thee, thou and thy son and thy son's son, all the days of thy life, and that thy days may be prolonged. Hear therefore, Israel, and observe to do it, that it may be well with thee, and that ye may increase mightily, as Yahweh God of thy fathers hath promised thee, in the land that floweth with milk and honey. Hear, O Israel, Yahweh our God is one Lord, one Yahweh. And thou shalt love Yahweh thy God with all thine heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy might. And these words which I commanded thee this day shall be in thine heart. This is a great verse. We see this again when Jesus was telling the Pharisees what the greatest commandment is. And this is it right here. And then he said, the second being, love thy neighbor as thyself. But this is the first and greatest. Thou shalt love the Lord, or Yahweh, thy God, with all thine heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy might. Amen to that, right? And these words which I command thee this day shall be in thine heart, and thou shalt teach them diligently unto thy children, shalt talk of them when thou sittest in thine house, and when thou walkest by the way, and when thou liest down, and when thou risest up. And thou shalt bind them for a sign upon thine hand, and they shall be as frontlets between thine eyes. And thou shalt write them upon the posts of thy house and on thy gates. And it shall be, when Yahweh thy God shall have brought thee into the land which he sware unto thy fathers, to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob, to give thee great and goodly cities, which thou buildest not, and houses full of all good things which thou fillest not, and wells digged which thou diggest not, and vineyards and olive trees which thou plantedst not, when thou shalt have eaten and be full. Then beware lest thou forget Yahweh, which brought thee forth out of the land of Egypt, from the house of bondage. Thou shalt fear Yahweh thy God, and serve him, and shalt swear by his name. Ye shall not go after other gods, of the people which are round about you, for Yahweh thy God is a jealous God among you, lest the anger of Yahweh thy God be kindled against thee, and destroy thee from off the face of the earth. You shall not tempt Yahweh your God, as ye tempted him in Massah. You shall diligently keep the commandments of Yahweh your God, and his testimonies and his statutes, which he hath commanded thee. And thou shalt do that which is right and good in the sight of Yahweh, that it may be well with thee, and that thou mayest go in and possess the good land which Yahweh sware unto thy fathers, to cast out all thine enemies from before thee, as Yahweh hath spoken. And when thy son asketh thee in time to come, saying, What mean the testimonies and the statutes and the judgments which Yahweh our God hath commanded you? Then thou shalt say unto thy son, We were Pharaoh's bondmen in Egypt, and Yahweh brought us out of Egypt with a mighty hand. And Yahweh showed signs and wonders great and sore upon Egypt, upon Pharaoh, and upon all his household before our eyes. And he brought us out from thence that he might bring us in, to give us the land which he sware unto our fathers. And Yahweh commanded us to do all these statutes, to fear Yahweh our God, for our good always, that he might preserve us alive as it is this day. And it shall be our righteousness, if we observe to do all these commandments before Yahweh our God, as he hath commanded us. Deuteronomy 7. When Yahweh thy God shall bring thee into the land whither thou goest to possess it, and hath cast out many nations before thee, the Hittites, and the Girgashites, and the Amorites, and the Canaanites, and the Perizzites, and the Hivites, and the Jebusites, 7 nations greater and mightier than thou. And when Yahweh thy God shall deliver them before thee, thou shalt smite them and utterly destroy them. Thou shalt make no covenant with them, nor show mercy unto them. Well, unfortunately, we already know what's going to happen, and they will make a covenant with them, and they will show mercy, which we read in previous chapters. God was prophesying how if and when they do this, they will be a thorn to them. They will make them fall, which they do. They make them worship other gods and do hideous abominations and sins, and go down the path to destruction, basically. Sad. I shall make no covenant with them, nor show mercy unto them. Neither shalt thou make marriages with them. Thy daughter thou shalt not give unto his son, nor his daughter thou shalt take unto thy son. For they will turn away thy son from following me, that they may serve other gods. So will the anger of Yahweh be kindled against you, and destroy thee suddenly. Yep, what do we see happen coming up here in the next few hundred years? We see, all the judges ruling. And what happens throughout Judges? There's many different people selected to basically rescue the children of Israel, because they get scattered, they get put under bondage, they get taken captive for hundreds of years. And then that they'll eventually repent of their sins, and then that's when God chooses a judge to go and to rescue his people at that specific time. And then they're free and they're good for a while, but then they go back to sinning. They go back to worshiping false gods and doing abominations, and they get recaptured again, and then it's a continuous cycle. So we literally see this. Essentially a prophecy. We see this come true, unfortunately, but his wrath was kindled, and it says in the Bible that God chastises those he loves, and this is a very great chastisement. But we read, our God is a consuming fire, one that should be feared, and a jealous God. So we need to take that into consideration. And we need to take that in consideration for our lives today, in today's world as well. Think of who you bow down to, so to speak. Do you have idols? Do you have images? Do you worship money more than God? Do you worship things or other people more than God? That is, in a way, idol worship. And our God is an unchanging God. Think how angry he got and jealous he got back here. He's an unchanging God, so he, of course, will be the same today. So we need to be careful and turn back to him and live for him and try not to go down the path of destruction. So, continuing on, Deuteronomy 7:5, but thus shall ye deal with them. Ye shall destroy their altars, break down their images, and cut down their groves, and burn their graven images with fire. For thou art a holy people unto Yahweh thy God. Yahweh thy God hath chosen thee to be a special people unto himself, above all people that are upon the face of the earth. Yahweh did not set his love upon you, nor choose you, because ye were more in number than any people, for ye were the fewest of all people, but because Yahweh loved you, and because he would keep the oath which he had sworn unto your fathers, hath Yahweh brought you out with a mighty hand, and redeemed you out of the house of bondmen from the hand of Pharaoh king of Egypt. Now therefore that Yahweh thy God, he is God, the faithful God, which keepeth covenant and mercy with them that love him, and keep his commandments to 1,000 generations, and repayeth them that hate him to their face, and destroy them. He will not be slack to him that hateth him, he will repay him to his face. And thou shalt therefore keep the commandments and the statutes and the judgments which I command thee this day, to do them. Wherefore it shall come to pass, if ye hearken to these judgments, and keep and do them, that Yahweh thy God shall keep thee, the covenant and the mercy which he sware unto to thy fathers. He will love thee, and he will bless thee, and multiply thee. He will also bless the fruit of thy womb, and the fruit of thy hand, thy corn, and thy wine, thy oil, and increase of thy kin, and thy flocks of thy sheep, in the land which he sware unto thy fathers to give thee. Yeah, and we also see this, this is something else we see. When the children of Israel are turning back to God and are living for God, however long it is, before they go down the path of destruction, but when they are living for him, we see this clear as day. They are prosperous. God does keep his promise. When they are actually turning to him fully, God blesses them. And then when they start to deviate, what happens? Well, God punishes them. So it's just amazing. We see both things. We see the punishment side, but we also see the blessing side. And he did bless them when they were focusing on him and turning to him. And during the time of kings, and they had kings, and there were very few good kings, but when they had those good kings, God did show mercy on them and did give them, prosperity and blessing. And we see that clear as day. But, when the bad kings come, evil, wicked kings come, we see, again, another one of God's prophecy. He punishes them severely. So, thou shalt be blessed above all people. There shall not be male or female barren among you, or among your cattle. And Yahweh will take away from thee all sickness, and will put none of the evil diseases of Egypt, which thou knowest, upon thee, but will lay them upon all them that hate thee. Thou shalt consume all people which Yahweh thy God shall deliver thee. Thine eyes shall have no pity upon them, neither shalt thou serve their gods, for that will be a snare unto thee. Yep, there's another mention of the snare, right? It is going to be a snare. They don't fully get rid of the evil, wicked people in the land. If thou shalt say in thine heart, these nations are more than I, how can I dispossess them? Thou shalt not be afraid of them, but shall well remember that Yahweh thy God did unto Pharaoh and unto all Egypt the great temptations which thine eyes saw, and the signs and the wonders, and the mighty hand, and the stretched out arm, whereby Yahweh thy God brought thee out, so shall Yahweh thy God do unto all the people of whom thou art afraid. Moreover, Yahweh thy God will send the hornet among them, until they that are left and hide themselves from thee be destroyed. Thou shalt not be frightened at them, for Yahweh thy God is among you, a mighty God and terrible. And Yahweh thy God will put out those nations before thee by little and little. Thou mayest not consume them at once, lest the beasts of the field increase upon thee. But Yahweh thy God shall deliver them unto thee, and shall destroy them with a mighty destruction until they be destroyed. And he shall deliver their kings into thine hand, and thou shalt destroy the name from under heaven. There shall no man be able to stand before thee until thou hast destroyed them. The graven images of their gods shall ye burn with fire. Thou shalt not desire the silver nor the gold that is on them, nor take it unto thee, lest thou be snared therein, for it is an abomination to Yahweh thy God. Neither shalt thou bring an abomination into thine house, lest thou be a cursed thing like it. But thou shalt utterly detest it, and thou shalt utterly abhor it, for it is a cursed thing. This right here is also a prophecy we see later on here coming up pretty soon, when, years later when Joshua takes the children of Israel into the promised land, that we see one of the cities that they loot, they conquer, and then they loot and plunder it. One person got greedy and took some things that were supposed to be God's things, and he got cursed. Him and his family, I believe, if I remember correctly. His family died. He died too, but his sin killed his family as well. So it is a cursed thing. Not only did he sin and steal something, but that was belonging to the Lord's. It was the Lord's. So careful with that. Deuteronomy 8. All the commandments which I command thee this day shall ye observe to do, that ye may live, and multiply, and go in and possess the land which Yahweh sware unto your fathers. Thou shalt remember all the way which Yahweh thy God led thee these 40 years in the wilderness, to humble thee, and to prove thee, to know what was in thine heart, whether thou wouldest keep his commandments or no. And he humbled thee, and suffered thee to hunger, and fed thee with manna, which thou knewest not, neither did thy fathers know, that he might make thee know that man doth not live by bread only, but by every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of Yahweh doth man live. Oh wow, this is a great verse. This is another verse that Christ later says. He repeats this to Satan. He repeats this actually a few times actually, but one of the times is when he's in the wilderness for 40 days, and Satan is tempting him, and Christ is actually quoting this, which is amazing to think about, because before, when we read those verses, you're like, okay, yeah, that's just God, that's just Christ saying that, but here we actually see it in the Old Testament, the exact words that Christ said. Wow, it's just amazing to find these little things that we might have missed the first time round. This is really amazing. So, man doth not live by bread only, but by every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of Yahweh doth man live. Thy raiment waxed not old upon thee, neither did thy foot swell these 40 years. Thou shalt also consider in thine heart that as a man chasteneth his son, so Yahweh thy God chasteneth thee. Another verse where it says, God chastises those he loves. So to be chastised means God loves us. It's not going to be pleasant, whatever it may be, but he doesn't chastise those he does not love. Therefore thou shalt keep the commandments of Yahweh thy God, to walk in his ways, and to fear him. For Yahweh thy God bringeth thee into a good land, a land of brooks of water, of fountains and depths that spring out of valleys and hills, a land of wheat and barley and vines and fig trees and pomegranates, a land of olive oil and honey. Sounds good. A land wherein thou shalt eat bread without scarceness, and thou shalt not lack anything in it. A land whose stones are iron, and out of whose hills thou mayest dig brass. When thou hast eaten and art full, then thou shalt bless Yahweh thy God for the good land which he hath given thee. Beware that thou forget not Yahweh thy God, in not keeping his commandments and his judgments and his statutes, which I command thee this day, lest when thou hast eaten and art full, and hast built goodly houses and dwelt therein, and when thy herds and thy flocks multiply, and thy silver and thy gold is multiplied, and all that thou hast is multiplied, then thine heart be lifted up, and thou forget Yahweh thy God, which brought thee forth out of the land of Egypt from the house of bondage. This right here is another great reminder that when, no matter what we're facing in life, good or bad, we need to stay humble and not forget to give God the praise and the glory, to be spiritually aware that it's God who's blessing you. It's God who's been with you. It's God who's been giving you all these things. So that's why every time, whatever situation we're in, and the Bible commands us to do so, give thanks in all things. In every situation, give thanks to God, because He deserves the praise and the glory, and also He is always with us. So that alone should be enough for us to be thinking of Him and thanking Him. Thank you, Lord, that You are always with us in every situation. No matter what the situation is, You are there. So be humble and give thanks to God is what we can take from this here. Deuteronomy 8:15, who led thee through that great and terrible wilderness, wherein were fiery serpents and scorpions and drought, where there was no water, who brought thee forth water out of the rock of flint, who fed thee in the wilderness with manna, which thy fathers knew not, that he might humble thee, and that he might prove thee to do thee good at thy latter end. And thou say in thine heart, my power and the might of mine hand hath gotten me this wealth. But thou shalt remember Yahweh thy God, for it is He that giveth thee power to get wealth, that He may establish His covenant which He sware unto thy fathers, as it is this day. And it shall be, if thou do at all forget Yahweh thy God, and walk after other gods, and serve them, and worship them, I testify against you this day that ye shall surely perish. As the nations which Yahweh destroyeth before your face, so shall ye perish, because ye would not be obedient unto the voice of Yahweh your God. Deuteronomy 9. Hear, O Israel, thou art to pass over Jordan this day, to go in to possess nations greater and mightier than thyself, cities great and fenced up to heaven, a people great and tall, the children of the Anakims, whom thou knowest, and of whom thou hast heard say, who can stand before the children of Anak? Understand therefore this day that Yahweh thy God is He which goeth over before thee, as a consuming fire He shall destroy them, and He shall bring them down before thy face, so shalt thou drive them out, and destroy them quickly, as Yahweh hath said unto thee. Speak not thou in thine heart after that Yahweh thy God hath cast them out from before thee, saying, for my righteousness Yahweh hath brought me in to possess this land, but for the wickedness of these nations Yahweh doth drive them out from before thee. That's another good point. When people are like, oh, the Old Testament is full of death and full of killing. People quickly who argue that quickly forget that these nations, well, we just read it, the wickedness of these nations. I think we read later on what they actually do, all the wickedness and the abominations. Some of them, probably not all of them, because there's probably too many of them, but we do know some of the abominations and wickedness that they do. They were so wicked, so wicked. I don't even want to say everything they did, but they did one of them that was probably one of the worst, is they, as the Bible says, they had their seed passed through the fire to Moloch. We're going to read more about that later too. So just evil, wicked stuff. People forget about that. People are like, oh, God was killing innocent people. No. God was not killing innocent people. They were wicked, wicked people. Not for thy righteousness, or for the uprightness of thine heart dost thou go to possess their land, but for the wickedness, again, the wickedness of these nations, Yahweh thy God doth drive them out from before thee, and that He may perform the word which Yahweh sware unto thy fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Understand therefore that Yahweh thy God giveth thee not this good land to possess it for thy righteousness, for thou art a stiff-necked people. Remember and forget not how thou provokest Yahweh thy God to wrath in the wilderness from the day that thou didst depart out of the land of Egypt, until ye came unto this place. Ye have been rebellious against Yahweh. Also in Horeb ye provoked Yahweh to wrath, so that Yahweh was angry with you to have destroyed you. When I was gone up into the mount to receive the tables of stone, even the tables of the covenant which Yahweh made with you, then I abode in the mount 40 days and 40 nights. I neither did eat bread nor drink water. And Yahweh delivered unto me 2 tables of stone written with the finger of God, and on them was written, according to all the words which Yahweh spake with you in the mount out of the midst of the fire in the day of the assembly. And it came to pass into the 40 days and 40 nights that Yahweh gave me the 2 tables of stone, even the 2 tables of the covenant. And Yahweh said to me, Arise, get thee down quickly from hence, for thy people which thou hast brought forth out of Egypt have corrupted themselves. They are quickly turned aside out of the way which I commanded them, and they have made them a molten image. Furthermore, Yahweh spake unto me, saying, I have seen this people, and behold, it is a stiff-necked people. Let me alone, that I may destroy them, and blot out their name from under heaven, and I will make thee a nation mightier and greater than they. So I turned and came down from the mount, and the mount burned with fire, and the 2 tables of the covenant were in my 2 hands. And I looked, and beheld, that ye had sinned against Yahweh your God, and made you a molten calf. You turned aside quickly out of the way which Yahweh had commanded you. And I took the 2 tables, and cast them out of my 2 hands, and brake them before your eyes. And I fell down before Yahweh, as at the first 40 days and 40 nights. I did neither eat bread nor drink water, because of all your sins which ye sinned in doing wickedly in the sight of Yahweh, to provoke him to anger. For I was afraid of the anger and hot displeasure wherewith Yahweh was wroth against you to destroy you. But Yahweh hearkened unto me at that time also. And Yahweh was very angry with Aaron to have destroyed him. And I prayed for Aaron also the same time. And I took your sin, the calf which ye had made, and burnt it with fire, and stamped it, and ground it very small, even until it was so small as dust. And I cast the dust thereof into the brook that descended out of the mount. And at Taberah and Massah, and at Kibroth Hattaavah, ye provoked Yahweh to wrath. Likewise, when Yahweh sent you from Kadesh Barnea, saying, Go up and possess the land which I have given you, ye rebelled against the commandment of Yahweh your God, and ye believed him not, nor hearkened to his voice. Ye have been rebellious against Yahweh from the day that I knew you. Thus I fell down before Yahweh 40 days and 40 nights, and as I fell down at the first, because Yahweh had said he would destroy you. I prayed therefore unto Yahweh, and said, O Lord Yahweh, destroy not thy people and thine inheritance, which thou hast redeemed through thy greatness, which thou hast brought forth out of Egypt with a mighty hand. Remember thou servants, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Look not unto the stubbornness of this people, nor to their wickedness, nor to their sin, lest the land whence thou broughtest us out say, Because Yahweh was not able to bring them into the land which he promised them, and because he hated them, he hath brought them out to slay them in the wilderness. Yet they are thy people and thine inheritance, which thou broughtest out by thy mighty power, and by thy stretched out arm. Oh man, so Moses, man, he had such a burden, and he actually saved him so many times by reaching out to God for them, praying for them, despite all their wickedness. Just amazing, isn't it, how much Moses cared for the people despite them doing so much wickedness. And that is a hard thing to do, because think about it. Think about people who sin against you, or people who are evil towards you. I mean, it's just so hard to be nice to people like that, right? But think of how hard it was for him to just not give up on them, just as God didn't give up on Moses or on us. So, alright, that's going to be it for today. Thanks, guys, for joining me. I hope you have a great evening, morning, noon, wherever you're at. Remember to put God first in everything you do. Have faith in him, have trust in him, and wait upon him, and you'll never be sorry. And God willingly, we'll see you tomorrow with more Bible reading. So, thanks, and see you later.